Attention.
Region Review.
The Raging Cajuns will be a source of pride for this university, for the alumni, fans, and donors as we achieve success in the classroom, in the competitive arena, and in the community.
It's about to get really fun.
We're looking for dudes that will stand up. Well, Coach, let me tell you today, I'm here and I'm ready to stand up. And I challenge you, Raging Cajun Nation, to stand up with us. Stand up with us. Let's lock hand in hand and let's walk through the gates of Omaha.
Hey, I love y'all boys. Let's grind every day starting today. Let's do it. Y'all ready? Alert! Ready? Who's that team ready? Who's that team ready? That's up.
I got one thing to say right here. Cajuns win!
Ladies, gentlemen, Cajun Nation, hello once again. Welcome to another edition of the Raging Review Podcast, Season 7, Episode 7. Game week against the Wake Forest Demon Deacons. I'm Jerry, joined by Nick, Lane. Gentlemen, happy Wednesday. How are y'all?
I'm tired, Jerry. I'm tired.
That's good to know, man.
Been a long week.
Got
Got my foot shells going on. And work has been nuts. It's just been a long week, dude.
I got you. I guess we all just get old eventually, right, Nick? We just all get old.
No, some of us actually work for a living.
Anyway, Lane, how are you, sir?
Pretty good.
Awesome. Well, so we'll talk a little bit about the Tulane game. We'll put that one to bed. We'll discuss the game day atmosphere. Looks like we had some positives, but we have to give our feedback on some of the not so positive things we saw at Cajun Field on Saturday, like the heat, for example. We will preview the Wake Forest game on Saturday as the Cajuns will travel to Winston-Salem, North Carolina to take on the Demon Deacons for the first time in school history. First meeting between the two schools. We'll also discuss the keys to victory in order for the Cajuns to get back on the winning side of things to beat the Demon Deacons. We'll give our predictions as well. We'll talk about what's going on around the Sun Belt. We'll talk about some NIL news around the country that is pretty much taken to social media. And we'll also discuss a little bit of conference realignment as well as some Raging Cajuns soccer and some Raging Cajuns volleyball. So, guys, let's get it started. Louisiana Raging Cajuns took on the Tulane Green Wave this past weekend in front of a crowd of 22,534 fans. The Cajuns dropped that game to the Tulane Green Wave by the score of 41-33. Louisiana's record now sits at 2-1 overall. And, I got to say, we talked a lot about this in the postgame the other day, guys. Going into the game last week, we said you cannot make mistakes against the Green Wave if you want to win. And we made two costly mistakes, which turned into 14 points for the Green Wave. We lost by 8. That might have been the big difference in the game. And we just made some of the mistakes that kind of popped its head out, just like we have the last 2 years. And they need to be fixed quickly, especially on defense and being able to convert key plays on offense as well. After the last couple of days, we get to kind of recollect on what we saw on Saturday. There were some encouraging things. That I saw. First of all, scoring 33 points. I think if you can do that on a Tulane defense, that does give me some optimism that we can do that moving forward. But there are a lot of things we need to clean up defensively. And, Tulane had their way with us. We were missing a lot of players in position making tackles or missing tackles. A lot of arm tackling. And it makes me wonder, guys, going into this week against Wake Forest, they run a very unique offense, and we'll discuss that later on. But do you think that's something that can get fixed in a week, going against a team that's kind of similarly built like Tulane with a big offensive line, a decent rushing attack? What do you guys think we can do just in the span of 5 days to be able to adjust to that going up against this ACC opponent this weekend?
I mean, you can't fix anything in a week. I mean, not to say you can't fix anything in a week, but I think it's going to be very difficult to do anything differently than you've done the first 3 games of the season. I think we were lulled into a little bit of a situation where we played 2 teams that were a lot worse than we kind of thought they were. I mean, Kennesaw State opened up as 3-point dogs to an FCS team. I mean, that ain't good. That's really bad. So you kind of wonder if what we showed the first 2 games is a little bit of fool's gold. Yeah, we did. I mean, any game that we play, we will show some good things. And you talk about us scoring 36 points against Tulane. Well, Tulane's secondary was suspect. And we threw the ball and they committed several penalties because that's what they do. But as far as running the ball, Tulane completely dominated on the line, completely dominated us on both sides of the ball. And so that gives me pause in going into Wake Forest. Now, do I think Tulane is better than Wake Forest? Yes, I do. Wake Forest has not been that great, and they just got demolished by Ole Miss. Their only win is against an FCS team, I think, this season. And they lost one to Virginia in a very close game, and Virginia is not that great this season. So I think we have not a better shot. I think we have a shot of pulling the win this week, but are we gonna fix arm tackling in a week? I don't know, because we've done that for a couple of seasons. Are we gonna fix how our defensive line performs against their big O line? I don't think you can fix that in a week. Now, can you come up with scheming in your game plan to help mask some of the inefficient things that we've done? Absolutely. But again, there are a lot of concerning things that I saw this week. I mean, our kicking game has to be better as far as kicking the ball out of bounds. And look, I know I lost my mind and saying kick the ball through the end zone. I still think we should kick the ball through the end zone. Des came on after the game and said, no, this is a game plan and we want to kick the ball short so we can make a tackle. I don't like that game plan, but I'm not the coach, so I don't get to make those decisions. But the fact of the matter is, if we're going to play that game, we got to have decent kick coverage, which we didn't, and allowed a touchdown, and we got to be able to kick the ball in bounds, which we didn't one time. That cost us 15 yards. So, again, there's a lot of cleaning up of stuff that we have to do between these weeks, but it's all stuff we continue to talk about season after season. So when you say, can you fix it in a week? Maybe, but are we going to fix it in a week? I don't think so, because now you've got some lingering things out there that that concern me a little bit and that haven't been fixed in years. Now, I think having Casey Osai back is going to be huge for us.
Big time.
I think
that's
huge. That's a key to us maybe pulling off the win this week. But I think I was a little over optimistic about the game against Tulane. I think I'm going to be very much very toned down against this game in Wake Forest and just look to see what we do. Because let's face it, Des has not had a big win outside of the bowl win when Napier left. He's not had a big win under his belt in 3 seasons. And last weekend was a chance for him to get a pretty big win. Didn't do it. Couldn't pull it off. Wake Forest is another opportunity against a P4 team. That would be the first time in 3 years. So that's why I'm being a little cautious going into this, because do we have the dudes to do it? Yes. Are we going to do it? I don't know. We'll see. I'm just wait and see, and I'm not going to try to predict anything crazy.
No, for sure. Lane, I'll ask you the same thing. I wanted to say about the special teams thing. I know Des really is a hard believer in pinning the ball back on a kickoff way deep into your opponent's territory. Personally, I think it's a gamble. I do know that Des and his coaching staff really have a lot of faith in our special teams or our guys to get down the field quick enough. He made a comment on Monday that really stood out. He's like, look, 2 of the guys on the kickoff did not get down the field fast enough. He said, if they want to basically lollygag and not hustle to the ball or hustle to the return man, I'll cut them right away. I'll fire them and I'll put 2 guys in there who will. We're going to follow that philosophy. We're going to stay with that philosophy. I just hope it doesn't backfire like it did on Saturday. It's a risk. It's a heavy risk. And I think that's very important. Now
we should put a poll up to ask our fans, do you Do you want to kick it through the end zone, or do you want to kick it, inbounds and try to get a stop? I'd love to see
Right.
what our fans think. I'm curious. I'm genuinely curious if I'm the only person who sees it that way. I know Foot sees it that way. He wants it through the end zone every time. I'm just interested to see what our fans think about it.
Lane, quick question. This is just what I asked Nick. Do you think we can fix the tackling issues that we had in the span of 6 or 7 days leading up to Wake Forest, from what you saw at the game on Saturday?
I don't know. That's tough to decide. Like Nick mentioned, the arm tackling's been going on for the last several seasons. But in order for us to have success on Saturday, we have to get off the field on third down and eliminate their running game. Those are the two biggest things to change.
Yeah,
And
it's true.
but Elaine, I'm glad you said that, because there was a poll posted, not a poll, but a ranking posted of the top 16 teams or 20 teams in FBS with the worst. I think it was who allowed the most third down plays on defense. And we're up there number 13 or something like that.
Yeah,
that
we're
ain't
45% or something like that.
Yeah, you don't want to be in that category, man. We don't want to be on that list. So they got to do better, man.
Yeah, and I bring that up because and Nick, you bring up a point, or you brought up a point about how you were a little more optimistic against Tulane. Now you're a little more skeptical. I think there were some things that we saw against Tulane that makes us a little skeptical about this Wake Forest matchup. And I think part of it is the basic fundamentals.
Because it's creeping back in. Because the things we didn't see the first 2 weekends, and again, we didn't see them in the first 2 games because our competition was not good. So you can cover some of that up with just the sheer talent differential. You can't do that against a good team. So we were exposed in the same places we were exposed last season and the season before. And I'm getting into it with fans on Florida fans on Twitter again, because I can't keep my mouth shut. And everybody, we stole your coach, and now they want to get rid of him. But Des learned his offensive play calling from Napier. Napier's play calling drove us nuts. We got wins, but it drove us nuts. It's driving Florida nuts, and they're not winning. And that philosophy continues again. That the play calling philosophy continues and drives us nuts. So that's not going to change. That is what it is. The way Des calls the games is the way Des calls the games. So that's why I think I'm getting a little bit of pause, because last week we saw that again. I thought we saw some nice things the first couple of games, but again, sheer talent differential helps you cover up some of those things.
Right. And I don't think the talent differential is really that different. I think it's like Deggs always says after a baseball loss, he always says, we gave him too much freebies, too many freebies. And I thought that's kind of what we did against Tulane. I felt like we gave them too many freebies. Besides the pick six and the kickoff return, we were in position to make plays at the line of scrimmage. Now, I got to give credit to Mekhi Hughes. He is a legitimate running back. I mean, he'll probably play on Sundays, but that still shouldn't stop our guys on the outside or on the edge to totally, completely arm tackle at the line of scrimmage and let him get another 6 or 7 yards.
Well, that's just it. We brought pressure and we got to him, right? But again, for the third week in a row or third game in a row, we couldn't get the sack. And that goes back to fundamentals. And we said it against Grambling. We saw a lot of that stuff against Grambling. But again, when I say talent differential, I'm not talking about against Tulane. I'm talking about the first 2 games. We were able to get away with that because we were so much better than Grambling. And again, against Kennesaw State. And frankly, I mean, Tulane beat us on the line. They beat us in the trenches. And that's really what that game came down to, is that while we exposed their secondary, we could not get past those 2 lines. And that's, to me, what again, the trenches are what really dictated the game. And Coach Hay said that when we interviewed him, the Tulane coach, he said the same thing. He said it's going to come back down to the battle in the trenches and who wins that battle. And look, I thought Tulane was better conditioned later in that game than we were in that heat. And to me, there shouldn't be an excuse for that, because we have the same heat in Lafayette.
Right.
So kudos to them for being that well conditioned, because I think that made a big difference.
Yeah. And for those who were wondering, Rusty Witt is their strength and conditioning coach. So I had a feeling they were going to be conditioned. I mean, he does a good job with everywhere he goes, he has his teams conditioned and ready to play. And then there was another play that stuck out to me in the fourth quarter. When we went for on our fourth down, and I think it was 4th and 9. Ben had just gotten an intentional grounding call, lost, I think, like 8 yards. And then we ran a draw, got back to about, 4th and 8, 4th and 9. And it was I think we lined up in the 4 wide, maybe. I think we had a 4 wide. It was 3 receivers out the shotgun. And when he went back to pass, he throws a dump off pass. And I don't know if it was Bill or was it Bill Davis or was it Zylan Perry in the flat, and he overthrew him. And I pretty much left at that point. That was the play where I'm like, all right, I'm going to start walking on. I'll listen to the rest of the game. I can hear tuna on the PA as I'm walking to my car to beat any type of traffic. And, I was walking on. I'm with one of my buddies or one of my friends. We're walking. I said, what the hell are you doing throwing a dump off pass on 4th and 9? And Coach Des explained it. Basically, there were some check downs that Ben didn't see, or he felt that they were covered. So he threw the dump off pass on 4th down. But, one of the things I will say leading up to that play, I know we didn't convert that, but the two straight intentional groundings by Ben. Look, I like Ben. Okay. He's a great quarterback. He's studious. He's a leader, all the intangibles, the players love him. Great. But as a 5th or 6th year senior, you have to know to not commit 2 straight intentional grounding calls. Get rid of the football. Find a way to get the ball past the line of scrimmage. He's got a strong arm. I thought that kind of threw me off a little bit with Ben. I was a little surprised by that.
Yeah, I thought so too. And look, Ben did not look sharp in some of the throws that he made in the game. Now, look, he was the reason that we were in the game, because we needed a good quarterback to have the game he had and identify where the pass interference was going to be and throw it in that direction each and every time. So I think I agree with you. But I just don't think Ben had his best game. And for Ben not to have his best game and we scored as many points as we did, I mean, I'm not going to hate on the man for that.
No. But here's part of the problem, and it's not Ben. But I think the way our offense is built, now this is me just kind of observing, looking at our roster. And I said it the other day, I feel like our 3 running backs, or the 3 running backs that we have, need to be literally maximized as far as utilized in the game. And then that's where I think Ben comes in as the game manager and completes some of those passes that he does when we win. But when you take away the rushing attack and you have to put it in the hands of Ben, not because I'm not saying he can't win the game by himself. What I'm saying is it's kind of out of our comfort zone to turn our offense into a passing attack, because I feel like our offense has always been built for the run to set up the pass. And I noticed in the fourth quarter, we had to kind of do the opposite, and it just kind of looked off, or unless maybe Tulane prepared for it. I just felt like it just looked off.
Well, I think Tulane, again, their defensive line was not worn down because of the fact that we did not run the ball straight at them for a lot of the game. What did Tulane do to be successful against us? Pounded us, and they came away with the win because their whole game plan was to wear our line down, and they did, and we had no answer for it. And we did, like you said, we did the opposite. We didn't pound the ball and we didn't run the ball. And I felt like we may have just abandoned that early, which we've seen us do before. We've seen us abandon the run early in the game. And so I think that cost us. Yeah, I think that potentially cost us a win. And the fact that, you can wear down the wide receiver or the defensive backs, I guess. But in the end, when we needed to pick up a couple yards in the running game, we struggled there. And going back to the play calling, look, I know he explained it. I don't like the 2-point conversion call that early in the third quarter. But the play call on the 2-point conversion call, like Terry said, we ran that in practice and we never completed the pass.
Yeah.
So why are we running of all the plays in our playbook?
Right.
If you're going to go for it that early in the game, I want something a little more secure in that play call. I want something that you see every week on the NFL where there's a guy wide open because you're just you're just playing the numbers game and getting a wide receiver loose. And instead we do this weird toss pass thing. That just goes back. It's very Billy Napier-ish. It really is, because Billy, scared money don't make money. We're going to take chances. It reminds me a lot of that. And it makes sense because that's where Dez learned his play calling.
You know, it's funny. I remember when this was back in like the prime of the Sean Payton, Drew Brees era. We played Houston, and this was like late in the fourth quarter. We had to go for two times in a row. And I think it was 2011. It was in the Superdome, and we were down by like 10. We were down by 11, kick a field goal. We score a touchdown, and then we go for two twice. I forgot the scenario, but we had to go for two possessions in a row. Sean Payton called the same play twice. Basically, he motions Lance Moore from the near side to the far side. Lance Moore, right when the ball snapped, he just runs to the edge, the pylon, and Brees hits him 2 times in a row. Simple play call. They executed it to perfection, but it wasn't a fake a reverse and the toss back and a halfback pass. It was a simple man in motion, man stays in motion, runs to the pylon, Brees hits him twice, 2 for 2 on 2-point conversions. My point is you can simplify it. For when you have a conversion from the 2-yard line, you don't have to run crazy trickery and flea flickers and annexations of Puerto Ricos and all that stuff. You could be simple. I personally would rather run like we did on goal line, where we kind of have those 3 backs behind the line. That always works. I think running the ball from the 2-yard line could have worked on that Tulane defense. But again, I don't call the plays, but I just, like you said, when Tyler said, we practiced against this and it never worked at practice, I'm just like, then why would you call that play if you never could convert it at practice? It just made no sense to me.
Yeah. So it is what it is, man. Well, again, I'm just going to temper my expectations for this weekend and then hope for a win.
For sure. So anyway, that was a little bit of the Tulane game review. I wanted to talk a little bit about game day experience. Lane, you were at the game. I was at the game. Look, let's be honest. Okay. It was hot. All right. Yeah. It was really, 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 really scorching hot. The high coming into this game was 95 degrees. I want to say, Lane, if you were to take a guess, I'd say in the stadium was probably about 105 heat index at least. I mean, they measured on the field 138 degrees from the turf as the heat would rise from the turf on the field. And with that said, fully well knowing that this was going to be a hot scorcher at 11 o'clock, first of all, shout out to first responders who were at the game. They were walking up and down, and they were wearing like long sleeve shirts, long pants. I mean, they were walking around and doing their job. I mean, they were tending to quite a few fans who maybe felt dehydrated, had, heat exhaustion. But the big thing was the whole water bottle fiasco. I got a text message in the second quarter from a friend where he and his girlfriend left the game early because he said, hey, don't go to the concession stand closest to the scoreboard because they ran out of bottled water. And he's like, my girlfriend then tried to go to the other concession stand, but because they ran out of water at that concession stand, everybody went to the other concession stand, and they were like, we're not going to wait in line for 45 minutes in the hot, scorching heat to get a bottle of water that's either hot or maybe might run out by the time we get to the front of the line. Look, I'm not here to just bash because I want to bash, but whenever we, Nick, me, or Lane, or Josh, or anybody, when we're told, we can't set up parking a certain way because of liability, we can't allow the Greeks to tailgate because of liability. Where's the liability in having a shortage of bottled water when it's 100 degrees outside? Where's the liability when, you fully well knew going into this game, it was 11 o'clock kickoff. You knew it was going to be hot. It was a 95 degrees on the weather forecast, like 3 or 4 days in advance. I'm sorry, but that's unacceptable. You can't run out of bottled water. I understand you're building a new stadium. I understand the logistics and the whole setup of the stadium. It's going to affect the way you hand out concessions and things like that. That does not negate the fact that you shouldn't have access to the right amount of bottled water when you were expecting over 20,000 fans. And then I find out from some fans that it happened to them in the second half against Grambling where they ran out of bottled water. How do you not prepare for that?
And it didn't help because, like you said, the bottles of water were hot. So I want to say 4 bottles of water the entire game. And I stayed the whole game. But every single bottle of water that I had was hot. Like, it'd be one thing if one of them was hot and the next 2 or 3 are cold. Great. But not when every single bottle is hot. Like, it just doesn't make sense.
Let me give my take on this. So back in the day when Sodexo took over, they were good because of Tolmach. Scott Tolmach, he ran Sodexo. Solid. Great leadership, had communications with him. You would see the guy at the baseball games with the big thing, and he'd make Philly cheesesteaks. Creative. They had different items. You know, it was truly a food experience. They had the Cajun crawl, whatever, swamp thing with the fried green tomatoes and all that. I mean, it was an experience. After he left, you saw that leadership go down, and now it is. Look, one, Sodexo was awful for putting the university in this position to begin with, and I know I yelled at the university. Ultimately, they're responsible. They need to make sure that Sodexo is living up to the standard that we need them to live up to. What I don't like about what Sodexo does is they do this thing where they, instead of hiring full-time people or whatever to come and work the games in the concession stands, they do these fundraisers. So you got a bunch of mamas from Lafayette High Band who have never done this before, trying to figure out how to control a crowd of people that just showed up, okay? And we goes back to like you going from one stand to another. Those people had no idea what they were doing. And I guarantee you that's a lot of the problem, is that you have such high turnover because it's different people every week and people who have never done this before. And the fans are gonna suffer in their game experience because of that. No fault of the people that are working these stands. They're just trying to make money for their schools or their dance classes or whatever. So that's one problem I have with Sodexo. But secondly, somebody at the university has to be able to make a decision that, hey, we're in a bad spot. People can't get water. Let's go ahead and do the scan your ticket in and out, whatever thing, so people can go get water. How difficult is that? Why don't we have leadership that can make that decision? And don't get me liability. You know what liability would be? Somebody dying in your stands because of this crap. That's a bigger liability than somebody walking outside, getting some water, chilling out during the third quarter and come watch the end of the game. I don't buy that. So somebody in leadership at the university needs to step up and, one, address the obvious issues. Two, I think they need to make a public statement, because the statements they've made have been conflicting. You know, we hear from the newspaper we had 6,000 bottles of water. Then they come up with, oh, we had 17,000 bottles of water. Well, guess what? There were 23,000 people in the stands. Either way, it's unacceptable, but you can't even get the messaging straight directly from the university. So I'm sorry if I'm attacking whatever, and I know there are going to be somebody, well, you know, go drink some Diet Coke. You know, that was a big joke this week. Well, you could have gotten Diet Coke. Well, that's the dumbest answer that I've ever heard in my entire life to there was no water in the stadium. That's like saying, go take a shot of Jack, you'll be fine. It's not the same. Just because there's water in it doesn't make it a hydrating drink. So yeah, I think look, I got upset when I saw Mickey Mayo's dad on Twitter saying, ran out of water, I was miserable, left early, not going back. We'll just say hi to our player after the game. Like, not going in the stadium again. A player's parent is saying that. That's terrible. So that's when I say it needs to be addressed. It really does. Like, somebody needs to take a leadership role in this and say something that'll make the fan looking to go to the next game confident that it's going to be fixed. But again, why do we keep having these issues? Like, if it's not water, it's this. If it's not the concession stands, it's the people manning the gates that won't let you in with a clear bag because it's not, you know, within regulation. When are we going to get it right? I mean,
well,
to me, we've not gotten it right since I've been there, and that was 20 somewhat years ago. Like, when are we going to get it right?
And, you know, it's funny because the school across the basin actually allows you a complimentary, I think it's 16-ounce bottle of water. They actually let you bring one in. I don't see why. And this is, and you want to talk about liability, that's over 100,000 people on a regular Saturday compared to
Oh,
our
but
20.
somebody might sneak in some vodka. Well, whoever's drinking vodka in 100-degree weather, if they drop dead, that's on them.
Right, right. And that's where I think you have to draw the line. And it comes down to safety of your customers, your customer base, right? That are coming into your facilities. And there's people out there that were like, well, maybe if y'all would have, we need to know how to hydrate and prepare ourselves. And I'm thinking, look, and one of my friends brought up a good point about that, because there's fans out there that are like, well, you do have to hydrate before the game, and it's going to be hot, so you have to prepare yourselves. And one of my friends brought up a good point to it. He said, look, a lot of fans did. You know what they did? They put cash in their wallets and brought it to the game, expecting to pull that cash out and pay for some bottled water that they didn't have. We talk about business. Oh, it's a business here. It's a business here. The business model should be having the right amount of bottled water so people can pay you money and produce revenue for yourself. You can't do that if you don't have availability of your resources.
But the
so how
funny
are you
thing
making
is,
money?
Jerry, but the funny thing is, the defenders, the first thing they want to blame is the fan. Like, how is it the fan's fault? Well, you should have drank more water. No, that's not the answer. That's the wrong answer. Oh, well, you should have done this. Well, you shouldn't have expected. If I go to a movie theater, I expect there to be popcorn. I mean, that's why if I come on here, I expect to be eating popcorn. It's the same thing. Like, you expect things you want to have a consistent experience at the events. That's why people go back to baseball. It's a consistent experience at the event. They know what it's going to be like. They know the songs that are going to play. They know what's available at the Mr. Vic's Peanuts. They know. With football, nobody knows from game to game. And you only have 6 or 7 games a year to get that fan. And you only have 6 or 7 games a year to prepare for. Baseball has 20-something, 30 games a year, and they get it right.
Ryan brings up a point about how the South End Zone has water fountains. He said, if they aren't going to supply the water, people need to keep their bottles and fill them up. I agree. Here's the problem with that. Not one time did I hear on a PA, not one time did I see at the game as far as advertising. I didn't even know they had water stations. Nobody advertised it on social media. I mean, they got that concession map, but it's like in small, 6-point font. Oh, we got
water. They want to sell the water,
here.
Jerry. They want to sell the water. They don't want you to bring.
Well, how can you sell water if you have no water to sell? I mean, so that's the thing. And look, and I'm not going to stay much longer on this, but I wanted to bring it up because we do have 4 more games left on our schedule that we want. We had over 22,000 people. I mean, we want people to show up to our games. But this kind of stuff is what causes people to say, never again, I'm not coming back. And the sad part about it is this is something that's the bare minimum. Having the right amount of bottled water should be the least of your worries. It should be second nature. It's so I wanted to say, adding on to this real quickly, I was told by a fan that there was a concession stand, I believe the one behind the end zone, the bell tower, that served cups of ice with the hot bottled water. They were like, well, they were serving cups of ice. And I'm like, that's great. But where I sat by the 45, 50-yard line, that concession stand, I didn't get no cup of ice. I just got hot bottled water. So that's another thing too, is communication. If this concession stand is going to serve a cup of ice with your hot bottled water, shouldn't you get that message out to the other 2 or 3 concession stands?
Because Jerry, somebody did what they should have done, and that was make a decision at that location that's what they were going to do. I'm not serving this hot water. We're giving them some ice with it. They made that decision. And that's the problem. We don't have decision makers across the board to keep it consistent.
I agree. And again, this is early in the season. I don't think it's going to be hot forever. But again, if you're going to, like you said, Nick, if you're going to mess this up, if you're not going to have the consistency to do something like this, like the bare minimum to actually have availability of bottled water when it's 100 degrees outside, I mean, what's going to happen in the next conflict? Are we going to skip out on something next time, or we're going to mess up on something again? And you're going to have another 5,000-6,000 people that say, I'm never coming back. You're trying to get people to come to your games. You're marketing. I mean, look, I'll give credit. They're marketing more. They're doing a good job promoting, like we've always talked about. But then all of that's going to go by the wayside by not being able to do something so simple. All that work. So all we're saying as fans and customers who show up to your games is just be consistent with the little things. I mean, this is low hanging fruit here, man. This is not, we're not asking you to serve filet mignon at the concession stands. We're just asking you, give us some bottled water when it's 100 degrees outside, and cold bottled water, not hot water, and give us a cup of ice with it, So I'm hoping that this is something they can learn from. I'm sure they had their meetings and said, look, we need to fix this. But, we've got a home game in 3 weeks against App State. I don't expect it to be 100 degrees outside, or at least I hope not. With this weather down here, it's, you never know. But we can't continue that. We just can't continue that. And we have to be consistent to doing things that should be pretty easy, like serving bottled water.
Yeah, and last thing I'm going to say on the last week's game is I have two older brothers. So we have Coach Doe, the middle brother. I'm Lil Doe because I'm the youngest, and you have Old Doe. Old Doe works the cheese part of the chain gang. Old Doe got run over in the first quarter, I think by a wide receiver from Tulane. Got knocked on his butt, hurt his leg, had to go to the tent. He's okay. He's recovered. He's fine. But Old Doe was roughed up in the first quarter of that game. Not because we got to clarify, because he would be very upset. It's not because it was hot. Yeah, I mean, he's an umpire in the summer, so he got the heat part. But he got knocked on his butt. So glad he's doing okay.
We're glad Old Doe's doing okay, and kudos to him for standing in that heat. Jeez, I can about imagine having to do that all day for 3 hours in that sun, going up and down the field on top of that.
Well, he only had to do it for half a quarter. It wasn't all that bad.
So anyway, guys, we'll turn the page on the Tulane game and the game day review. Like we said, we got 3 weeks to fix it. We got 3 weeks to fix the game day experience. Outside of that, I mean, look, even in the heat, I thought the atmosphere in the stadium was great. Students showed up. The crowd was into it. I love, like I said the other night, I love the intimate setting. I think with this new stadium and the way it's more kind of enclosed at the bottom, more inclusive, I guess, it's going to create more of an intense atmosphere rather than the crowd being spread out because of the upper deck that really not many people sat in unless it was a big game. So I think trapping that crowd more in towards the bottom of those areas around the stadium, I think it's going to be great. I think the atmosphere is going to be awesome, and I like it. I like it. It's like you said the other day, Nick, the old Teague. Very, very similar vibes. Very similar vibes. And there's not a bad seat in the house.
And the good news is when they open the other side of the stadium, you're not going to lose a lot of that. It's still going to be an intimate setting because you don't have a press box and a second deck that goes up, 5 stories. I mean, it's going to be
right.
It's going to be a lot more intimate there, and you're going to keep some of that noise inside the stadium. So yeah, very happy for that, and I think that's a good sign of things to come.
Correct. Anyway, guys. Okay, so moving on to Wake Forest. I know we kind of touched base on Wake Forest a little bit on what we need to do. So Louisiana travels to Winston-Salem this weekend to take on the Wake Forest Demon Deacons out of the ACC. I believe this is the first meeting between the two schools. This game was scheduled not too long ago. I think it was about a year ago or so, or a year or two ago, to replace it was last year. It was last year because this replaces the Michigan State game. This will be the last non-conference game for Louisiana before going into conference play against Southern Miss on October 5th. So the Cajuns, they'll kick off against the Demon Deacons at 2:30 Central Standard Time on Saturday. The game will be on ACC Network. So for those of you who are not sure, check with your cable provider, the ACC Network, to make sure you have it. Because if you don't, if your package deal doesn't come with it, you may have to go somewhere else to watch the game. So let's talk a little bit about Wake Forest. So they're kind of one of those, I call them like a P4 tweener team. They're kind of like an Iowa State or like an Illinois where, they're not Clemson or I would say Florida State, but Florida State's bad this year, but they're not the upper echelon of the ACC. But every once in a while, they'll play some competitive football. They're kind of like Baylor in the Big 12. Some years they're really, really good where they can be really competitive, top 15 type program. And then there's some years where they're just bad. I don't really know what to gauge with Wake Forest this year. I know recently they've had some decent success. And so this is one of those games. I like these type of games. I like playing like we played Minnesota last year, even going to play Michigan State if we would have been able to get that game going this season against the Spartans. I like playing those sort of middle of the road P4 teams because number one, it's winnable. And number two, I think those type of games it's kind of like a measuring stick for us. on where we stand and how we compete against these bigger schools. Now, Wake Forest obviously is not, they don't have a crazy amount of money. They're not like this massive school with a massive budget. I believe their enrollment's about 8,000 students. So they're a little bit on the smaller side for a P4, but they've had some recent success. And I think I want to say they either went to the ACC championship game recently. I know they've been to, I want to say they played in the Orange Bowl recently. So they're not a bad team. But at the same time, guys, I feel like this game is kind of winnable. Like they've played some Sun Belt schools in the past. I want to say they played ULM back when Colton Browning was there. They had a home and home with them, and ULM went 2 for 2 against them. So you look, I don't know. I mean, I've watched a little bit of their highlights this year. They look like a decent football team. They've got some talent, but if we fix some of the stuff or mistakes we made and we clean some things up, guys, I think this is a very winnable game for us.
Yeah, I think they're and I don't mean this in any disrespect if any Wake Forest fans are watching this. I think they're a middle of the road Sun Belt team this year, and especially last year. They were picked up 11th in the ACC, but they are still an ACC team, right? So you got to respect the fact that they do have resources, and their quarterback, the quarterback hasn't turned the ball over once this year. And he's got experience starting at Boise State, then he went to Louisiana Tech, and now he's a 5th-year senior. So you're going to have 2 very experienced quarterbacks, and I'm sure you'll talk about his weird. If you watch the games, they run this weird offense where it's not option, but it gives him time to read the defense and hold the ball long enough to be able to decide if he's going to hand it off at the very last second. And you've seen that before in a couple of different offenses across the country, but he does it really, really well. He's able to hold that ball in his breadbasket, and fool the cameraman a couple times in the tapes that I watched. So very unique offense. They don't score a whole lot of points. They scored 20. I think they averaged 27 points this season, which is not great. Now they blew out an FCS team. Very close loss to Virginia, and then Ole Miss. I mean, Ole Miss beat them bad enough that they canceled the game next year. So that tells you something there. So it's a little misleading. I think they faced both a really bad team and a really, really good team, and then you had Virginia in the middle. So I think that's a little bit deceiving. But again, you have to respect the fact that they've got talent on that team. It's I don't know. I don't know what to think of this, Jerry. After last week, you thought you had this team figured out, and I don't know. I don't know what to think.
By the way, I said they went to the Orange Bowl recently. I was wrong. They went to the Gator Bowl in 2021 with an 11-3 record, and they defeated Greg Schiano and the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. So they've in the past couple of years, outside of last season, from 2016 to 2022, they've played the Military Bowl, they played the Belk Bowl, Birmingham Bowl, Pinstripe Bowl, Dukes Bayo Bowl, the Gator Bowl, and the Gasparilla Bowl. I mean, they've been to the postseason quite a few times. Now they've gone in with like 7-5 records or 8-4, 6-6. But in the ACC, that's pretty respectable. I mean, that means they've beaten some quality opponents to get to that point. But at the same time, it's like you said, Nick, there's a lot of unknowns about them. That offense they run, first of all, their quarterback is Hank Brockmeyer. If you remember that name, he was the quarterback at Boise State before transferring to Louisiana Tech last season. I believe he was Tech's quarterback last year, and now he's at Wake Forest as the starter for the Demon Deacons. They run this weird read option RPO type offense where the RPO, it's unique. And I know Kevin Foote wrote an article about it. He was talking to Coach Salgado on how we really prepare for it. It's unique for us to prepare for it because a lot of coaches have never seen it like this. The way it works is, and you'll notice it on Saturday, Brockmeyer, when he hands the ball off, it looks like he's about to basically run with the running back when he hands it off, and then he'll just drop back and throw it. Like it's like a slow version of an RPO. Now, I watched the highlights against Virginia, and one thing I noticed against Virginia was that they got to him a few times when it did that. Now, that means their offensive line is going to have to be really, really effective in pass protection if he's going to do stuff like that, holding the ball that long. And that's where I think we need to put pressure on them. I think that's an opportunity for our defense to put pressure. But what they're expecting is once he pulls that ball back, There's going to be an open tight end. There's going to be an open receiver downfield. So I'm interested to see how our defensive coaching staff is preparing for this, because it is a unique offense, very unique.
I think they're probably in practice trying to emulate the option, like the option defense, like you're trying to play defense. Maybe they're looking at kind of a Kennesaw State type of deal where you're trying to prevent the read option, but it's all about assignments, man. I mean, regardless of what they run. Now, you said we have to bring pressure. I disagree with you, Jerry. I don't think we need to bring pressure. I think we need to get sacks. You can bring pressure all day, but if you arm tackle, it's not going to do you any good. Not against this cat who can pull it down and run it. So, yeah, I don't think bringing pressure is good enough. I think you have to get sacks against this guy. I don't think pressure is going to do it. And we haven't had a sack this season.
I mean, pressure leading to
I know what you're saying, but I'm saying the pressure is not good enough. Like, just bringing pressure,
package, right?
Just bringing pressure ain't going to cut it. We have to bring this guy down a couple of times, because then if you bring pressure, he's starting to think, it's getting in his head. But if you just bring pressure, he breaks out of it. That gives him confidence. And we know on our side, if we bring pressure and don't get to the guy, we're thinking, here we go again, 4th game in a row. So I think that's very important.
So he has 20 rushing attempts on the season for only 10 yards, which is a positive on the rushing side, but he has about 900 yards passing.
Yeah, and I think when you watch the tape from the Tulane game, I mean, I really think Wake Forest is going to try to pound it down our throats. I really do. I mean, I think they're going to start off trying to pound it down our throats to wear down our defensive line and mix in some of that passing. You know, the guy can pass the ball. So I think you'll see some of the gimmicky play alongside of that. But hell, if you can pull the ball down and get 8 or 9 yards, why even attempt to pass?
Yeah, and you know, it's crazy. I looked at some of their rushing stats, and of course, Damon Claiborne is their main guy. I mean, he averages about 5 yards a carry, but overall, if you include Hank Brockmeyer's stats, granted he's taken some sacks, they only average 3.7 yards a carry. So, I mean, that's actually a lot lower than I expected for an offense that runs that type of scheme. Now, you know, they got spanked by Ole Miss. Ole Miss's defense flies to the football. Maybe that might be an outlier causing those numbers to go down. But at the same time, it doesn't take away the fact that still the number's a little bit lower for the offense, that sort of read option RPO offense that they run, or unique offense that they run. I expected it to be closer to 5 yards a carry. So maybe there's a little bit of optimism there that we can prepare for. But it goes back to individual assignment football. When you play against teams that run RPOs, especially an offense like that, each player is going to have to play his role very effectively, because that's those type of offenses. That's how they pick out. They pick out that one missed assignment and they run with it. It happened against Tulane last week. Actually, one of the touchdown passes that they threw was a wide open tight end. One of our guys missed his assignment. And so that's the type of preparation we're going to have against this team. And it's going to be very, very detail oriented for each of our defensive players to follow their assignment.
Yeah. I agree with you. And just, you know, I'm a stats guy. So there, one thing that I wanted to mention is that in 3 games, Wake Forest, it ranks 85th in FBS in total points per game on offense. And on the defensive side of the ball, they rank 95th. They give up 28 points a game. Again, you could say that's an outlier, but I mean, when you average Ole Miss really good, really bad FCS team, Virginia in the middle, I think you kind of have an idea of you know what they are. But I feel like we're back. I'm still back to where I was last week. We're like, who are we? And Josh came on the post game and said, we are who we are, and we've always been that way. I tend to agree with it. Like, again, we're in year 3 and we're seeing a lot of the same stuff that we've complained about. Now, I will say the one thing that has gotten better penalty wise, I think we've been a lot more disciplined this season. So I'm really glad to see that. However, we still see some of the same things that made us pull our hair out. And again, I credit that to the fact that Dez is a protege under Napier, and Napier made us pull our hair out. And I think we just have to live with that is what it is. Now, I do want to see more out of the defense this week. I think having Casey Osai is going to be a big boost for us. But I do think we're going to see some improvement, because I felt like, if we're being at all honest, the secondary, our line, we were gassed from that heat. I don't think we were as well conditioned as Tulane, and I think that made a huge difference in the ball game.
I don't, and you know, that's a good point. I mean, obviously it's not going to be 105 degrees in Winston-Salem. If anything, it's going to be kind of wet because of of Hurricane Helene that's supposed to be headed that way. Hopefully it to everybody in its path, it passes on through as quick as possible and does as little destruction as possible, because I'm kind of curious, guys. Like, we fly out on Friday to the northwest part of North Carolina. I'm kind of wondering how that's going to affect our travel plans.
Well, they're going to call Jim Cantori. He's dating that girl from Lafayette. They're going to figure it out. Did you see that, by the way? He's dating a recent ULM grad. And hey, people are giving him hate because she's probably 30 years younger than him. But cheers, my guy.
Hey, she's an adult. If she's an adult,
hey,
fair game.
Hey,
fair game.
People need to mind their own damn business. I'm just saying.
Yeah, so that's look, that's another dynamic and another factor we didn't really talk about is weather. You know, is it more advantageous for us to play in the rain against an offense like that? Because we know we can run the football. I think this time, and one thing I noticed about their defense, look, they've got a decent defense. I watched their game against Virginia. Virginia actually scored on a lot of broken assignments by their secondary. Virginia's rushing attack was able to get around the edge. And I think Dez said this with Jay the other day. Their D line, they're big, they're very big, but they're not as fast around the edge. I feel like we can run on them around the edge. That could be something we can use in our rushing attack.
Look, the thing that I need to see is, again, we need to commit to the run. And if the first couple of drives we stall out, but we're still pounding the rock, I'm okay with that. But secondly, when we throw the ball, Ben can't overthrow receivers, and receivers can't drop the ball. I mean, there were a bunch of drop passes. And if the ball hits you in the hands, you need to catch it. Outside of Jacob's one-handed attempt in the end zone, which would have been freaking amazing, he needed a little bit more sticky stuff on his glove. But we got to clean that stuff up, and it starts this week. Attention to detail, I think you said it earlier, that has got to be, I'm hoping that is the focus this week, because that's really what we need, attention to detail, because that cost us last week, and it'll cost us again against an ACC team. We can't afford to go on the road. You know, it's probably an ACC crew that's going to be calling the game. Put you a little bit of a disadvantage there. We've seen that before. So we've got to go out and just make sure we're hitting our assignments. We're catching the ball. Ben's not overthrowing guys, and pound the rock. I think that's the key to success.
There you go. So it goes right into our 3 keys to victory. Lane, I'll start with you. What are the 3 things the Cajuns need to do to beat Wake Forest this weekend?
They need to get off the field on third down, run the ball, and don't allow Wake Forest to run the ball.
Force them to throw. Nick, you just said it, but just repeat your lines.
Yeah, we gotta pound the rock. We gotta run the ball. We gotta control the clock, because their little gimmicky offense, you want to keep that off the field. We got to, as I told you, bringing pressure is not good enough. You got to get some sacks, because then that puts him down on his head. So get some sacks. And then finally, kick the damn ball inbounds. Look, if we're going to do this, this thing that I hate, this kicking the ball, just short of the goal line, if we're going to do this, do it right. Kick the ball inbounds. And then get some good kick coverage. Look, I think that was out of the ordinary. We've not seen a kick return in a while. I get it, but that was ugly. That kid was not fast. That felt like that was like slow motion. So we can't allow that to happen against Wake Forest, because you really can't give them any opportunities. They're at home. They're trying to get some respect. They're 1-2 on the season. They're not happy to where they want to be, and they start ACC play. So Those three to me are the keys to victory this weekend.
Sounds good. Sounds good. So my three keys to victory, I remember it's kind of some of the stuff is what you guys said. You got to stall their drives. Keep them off the field. Keep them off the field. Don't let them wear out our interior D line. Don't let them wear out our front seven, because that's basically what happened last week. And it gives us more opportunity on offense to, like you said, run the football, extend drives, kind of create doubt in their minds, especially if you go up against their front seven. And that's my second key is to run the football. We got to get that identity back of running the football. We have 3 running backs, all of which are good enough, in my opinion, to get on an NFL roster. Use them. Use what you got. Run the football and then set up for the pass. Third thing, make them earn scoring drives. To your point, Nick, don't give them a kickoff return for a touchdown. Don't throw pick sixes. Make them earn their points. If you make them earn their points and you make them grind for it and make them work for it, even if we come up short, you know what? They had to earn their win. I'd rather do that than give away, as Coach Deggs always says, freebies. You cannot give away freebies on the road against a P4 opponent, whether it's Wake Forest or whoever. You're on the road against a P4 opponent. Those teams prey on freebies. So no freebies. So those are my 3 keys to victory. So let's move into predictions. What do you guys think is going to happen on Saturday? Let's hear it.
All right. So for the first time, I think, ever on this pod, I am going to predict that the opponent gets the win 31-27. I think Wake Forest beats us. I don't know. I mean, prove me wrong is what I'm thinking.
I'm thinking, like Nick said, I think Wake Forest will pull it out. It'll be closer than most people would think, but I'm predicting them to win 27-21.
Okay, I guess I'll be the optimistic one here. But it's fair predictions. I really feel like the Cajuns could get back on track. I feel like if this coaching staff is capable of what they're capable of, I think they can go in and fix the simple mistakes. I think they can go in and focus and improve on the fundamentals, have a good week of practice this week, which they're in the middle of practice right now, but hopefully they're working on, making tackles when they're in position. Like you said, Nick, not kicking the ball out of bounds, making sure they're running all the way down the field since they want to pin other teams in their own territory for kickoffs, all those little things. I think if they can fix that, which I'm confident they will, I think the Cajuns pull off the win. So I'm going to be opposite of you guys. I'm going to go Cajuns 28-24. And they go into conference play with a 3-1 record. And let me tell you something, guys. Like I said, Wake Forest is obviously they're not Clemson. But when you go on the road against an ACC team and beat them, that's a good win. It's a good win. So let's hope they can pull it off there.
Yeah, and they're again trying to prove a point. They're trying to get back to 500, and they're at home, so they're going to be ready. So let's get it done. I won't be disappointed if we win. Trust me, I won't. So I might be using a little bit of reverse psychology here. Okay.
There you go. Nothing wrong with that. Sometimes you got to change it up a little bit, little reverse psychology never hurts. Okay. So again, Louisiana will go on the road to take on Wake Forest. Kickoff at 2:30 Central Standard Time down in a Legacy Federal Credit Union Stadium in Winston-Salem. The Cajuns and the Demon Deacons. Game will be on the ACC Network, or you can listen to Hot 107.9 or 103.3 The GOAT, as well as 1420. Look for Jay, Cody, and Dawson to be on the airwaves doing their great play-by-play. And, of course, we'll be here after the game to give you our 2 cents on what we saw but in this matchup for our post game.
I am hosting a watch party. I can't guarantee you I'm going to be alone. I will have people here, and I'm smoking a brisket all night the night before. So,
ooh,
yeah, I will probably have people around me during that. I'm not apologizing. It just is what it is.
Nothing wrong with that. Party at Nick's. If you're in the Houston area, Cajun fans, and you want to go somewhere to watch the game, Nick is smoking a brisket at his house.
Jerry, shut up.
You just don't even tell me to shut up. You invited him.
I will give people your address and tell them that you're hosting a party on X and Facebook. Don't play with me, little boy.
Well, they're going to be disappointed. I have no brisket, so unfortunately.
Well, they'll be disappointed with your company regardless. Just kidding, Jerry. You know, I love you.
Man. I know. Sometimes I wonder, but it's all good. So, guys, moving on to the Sun Belt, let's talk a little bit about what happened in conference last week. Some pretty interesting scores, guys. We'll start off with the Sun Belt Week 4 review, starting with Thursday. South Alabama went to App State. Looks like they're pretty much in mutiny mode with Sean Clark. South Alabama wins against App State. They dominated them in Boone by the score of 48-14. Like I said, App Nation is not too happy right now. They actually have a tough matchup against Liberty this week, so better get their act together fast.
I gotta say, call Cat, because that was brutal, and also it was so bad. They apparently had a board of trustees meeting the following day, and like some guy got on and I don't know how they got on this subject, but he just started talking about and just laying into App football and how that was an embarrassing loss. And I'm like, could you imagine like somebody going to a Louisiana legislature meeting and talking about our game? Like, that's weird. That I don't think that was the place for that, but that just tells you how much they love their football at App State.
No doubt. It's definitely a big culture there. Of course, Louisiana, I'm looking at the score here. Tulane defeats Louisiana 41-33. We already knew that. James Madison, that was probably the big win of the conference, going to Chapel Hill, defeating the North Carolina Tar Heels 70-50. Again, I didn't realize basketball season started so soon, but man, JMU clicking on all cylinders, taking care of business. Nice win against a respectable P4 opponent. JMU looks like a team that's on a mission this year, especially now that they're eligible for the conference championship and postseason play. Ohio State took care of Marshall down in the Horseshoe. Final score, the Buckeyes defeat the Thundering Herd 49-14. Virginia, speaking of which, Virginia defeated Coastal Carolina in Conway. Look, kudos to Coastal Carolina being able to host an ACC team, but they get their first loss of the year to the Cavaliers. Final score, Virginia 43, Coastal Carolina 24. Iowa State down in Ames hosted Arkansas State. Iowa State Cyclones had no problem with the Red Wolves. Final score, Iowa State 52-7 over Arkansas State. Troy gets their first win of the season as they hosted Florida A&M down in Troy. Troy wins by the final score of 34-12. Ole Miss down in Oxford, number 5 team in the country, by the way, had no problem with Georgia Southern as they defeated the Eagles by the score of 52-13. Number 1 team in the land, the Texas Longhorns, basically cakewalked their way through their game against ULM down in Austin by the final score of 51-3. And last but not least, Southern Miss. What the heck happened to them? Went up to Jacksonville, loses to Jacksonville State by the score of 44-7, giving Jacksonville State their first win of the season. I've had the chance to speak with a few Southern Miss fans. It ain't looking good, boys, in Hattiesburg. I'm going to tell you, they get a bye week this week, and they play the Cajuns. Now, I'm not going to say anything until that clock strikes 0 and we beat them, but I know there's a lot of panic going on down in Golden Eagle Nation. They were actually wondering if they fired Will Hall on Monday.
I am just thankful that they didn't, because you know that if they hired another coach
Right.
or they'd come out and they'd score 55 points that they've never done in like the last 2 seasons. And it's funny because somebody posted something on Twitter, and I wanted so bad, but I didn't want to get it with, because I feel bad for them because they're so terrible right now. But it was like their Super Bowl. They're like, well, hopefully we go 1 and whatever and beat Louisiana. I'm like, of course, we're your freaking Super Bowl now. But I didn't want to be that guy, because I hate when people tell us that. But I do kind of feel bad for them, but not really, because you know what? When they win, they're all over X, but when they're not winning, you can't find one. Like Destiny, you can find her, you can find a couple of the but like most of their fans, they disappear into the void. You never hear from them. Where are all the Southern Miss fans now? You can't find one.
One of my good friends, Marchant Kenny, of course, he had his podcast. I've been on it a few times. Big friend of our pod. I talked with him a good while the other day, and he's a realist. He's not gonna sugarcoat anything, and he basically said, he's like, it's bad down there right now. It's really, really bad. And he straight up told me, he goes, look, I know we have a bye and we have you guys next week. He goes, if y'all don't beat us, like, y'all just need to cancel the season because we're terrible. I said, okay, all right, we'll see.
They were terrible last season.
We'll see. Yeah, we'll find out. But
I ain't worried
anyways,
about them until we play our game
nope.
this week.
Let's worry about Wake Forest, and then we'll worry about the Golden Eagles next week. And that, by the way, that's who the Cajuns play to open up the conference. They go to Hattiesburg next week after this game against Wake Forest. So Sunbelt football week 5. What's on the slate for this weekend? Of course, Cajuns travel to Winston-Salem. They'll take on Wake Forest. Kickoff will be at 2:30. Ball State will head over to JMU. Kickoff there will be at 12:30. Texas State and Sam Houston meet in a matchup in Houston, Texas. So it'll be a neutral site game. I think the Bobcats had a bye week this past week, so they'll be taking on Sam Houston out of Conference USA. Liberty and App State. Let's see if App State can get back on track this week. They'll host Liberty down in Boone. Kickoff will be at 2:30. Georgia Southern and Georgia State, the Battle of Georgia. They'll take on Georgia State in Atlanta. Kickoff will be at 2:30. Marshall will host Western Michigan out of the MAC. They'll take on the Broncos down in Huntington.
Hey, Jerry. I don't think he can hear you, buddy.
Sorry about that. My microphone went mute. So
Yeah, let's try that again.
all right. Old Dominion will travel to Bowling Green to take on the Eagles. Did I mention Western Michigan and Marshall? Yeah, I mentioned Western Michigan and Marshall. They will go to Western Michigan goes to Marshall, kickoff at 2:30. Old Dominion at Bowling Green at 4. ULM will travel to Troy, Alabama to take on the Trojans. Kickoff will be at 6 o'clock. And last but not least, South Alabama will travel to Baton Rouge to take on the Tigers. Kickoff at 6:45. So lots of good Sunbelt football this weekend. Should be action-packed. And yeah, they look like they got some good matchups. And look, you're playing some teams out of the MAC. You've got a matchup against a Conference USA school. You know, we're playing a team out of the ACC. Good opportunity for the Sunbelt to shine. Good opportunity for the Sunbelt to get some key wins to reign supreme in the G5.
Look, we need this win. I mean, Des needs this win. We've not had a signature win since he's been here. This is the time. Like, we're overdue. We need to get this win under his belt. And this is your opportunity. If not Wake, then who is my question. So we got to clean it up. And I think you have an opportunity this week, but again, we can't do what we did last week.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. So moving on, I wanted to talk a little bit about, I kind of wanted to mix it up, but we'll start with NIL. As you all know, there's been huge news as of late last night. Basically, the quarterback at UNLV, Matt Sluka, said that he wanted to redshirt and won't play the rest of the year. He said, I committed to UNLV based on certain representatives that were made to me, which were not upheld after I enrolled. Despite discussions, it became clear these commitments would not be fulfilled in the future. I wish my teammates the best of luck this season and hope for the continued success of the program. Now, so he's leaving. He's leaving because he was promised basically to get paid by a third-party NIL deal, and he hasn't seen his money. Whereas UNLV came out with a statement, and Nick, what did that statement say? Do you know?
That he's full of crap, and we didn't promise him that, and we met our obligation, and bye. I think that is the crux of what it was. It was that is not the case. And in fact, let me pull it up. I'll give you the exact wording if you give me a second. But that's basically what it is. UNLV came back and said football player Matthew Sluka's representative made financial demands upon the university and its NIL collective in order to continue playing. UNLV Athletics interpreted these demands as a violation of NCAA pay-for-play rules, as well as Nevada state law. We do not engage in such activity. Of course not. We'd never do anything illegal to win football games. Blah, blah, blah. UNLV has conducted its due diligence and will continue to operate its programs within the framework of NCAA rules and regulations, and as well as Nevada state laws. I found that very interesting. Do I believe what UNLV says, or do I believe what the quarterback says? I can't answer that, man. It's definitely a he said, she said thing. What I found more interesting, and look, before I get to that, I just want to say this is not surprising. Like, who did not see this coming? We've been, and I say we, all of college football, all of their fans have been saying this. We're going down a path that's not sustainable. The bubble's gonna burst. I thought it would take a few more years, but that bubble is bursting. And then you have the NCAA come out with a lame statement that I'm not even going to repeat because it was so stupid, basically saying, well, we can't really do anything, but we plan to do some things to fix this. Like, the NCAA statement was insulting. It was stupid. That pissed me off. That's why I'm not going to read it. It was terrible. So
it was the typical NCAA statement that they usually put out for everything.
Right. And you know, it's and we're going to talk about the Pac-12 situation because that changed since we last talked about it. But in the end, people keep saying things like, well, this is for the student athlete. Well, this is better for the student. Well, it's for the students to get paid. Well, is it? Or is it for the attorneys, not the attorneys, but the agents to get paid? Like, who's brokering these deals? And who's to say that UNLV didn't negotiate this and the kid didn't get paid, but he didn't get the money because his agent took 90% of it? Who's to say that didn't happen? And I just find it amusing. And then you have attorneys on Twitter that are saying a contract between the Pac-12 and the Mountain West Conference, just because they signed it, didn't make it legal. On one hand, they're saying that. On the other hand, they're saying you need to make sure you get a contract signed for NIL. So basically, contracts are good when you like the contract, but when they're not good, well, that doesn't make them legal. I don't know where I fall on this because I don't know the facts and we don't know the facts. And this is all going to come out in court one day because, you know, somebody's getting sued for something and there's going to be all this stuff going on. My disappointment in all of this is the NCAA's response, which is, well, we can't really do anything, but we hope to do some stuff in the future. That tells me, why do we have you around? Because you can't enforce the rules. You enforce them selectively. When people break the rules, the old joke is if Arkansas violates the rules, Arkansas State's getting the death penalty. It's the truth. I think this furthers the P4 to say you're worthless. You can't protect us. We're out. I think that's what this is accelerating, unfortunately. Now, I think you've opened Pandora's box, and two more players from UNLV left, and one of them said it was not NIL. USC player just announced he's leaving. So now, you know, we were concerned about players leaving or not playing in bowl games. Now we got players that aren't even making it through a quarter of the season saying I'm out. And we're not talking about guys riding the bench. We're talking about starting quarterbacks. The state of college football is broken. And I don't know if it'll ever, like, I know it's never going to be the same like it was before, but now I don't know if it's fixable. And that's what's scary to me.
You know, you're right, Nick. And I think what's frustrating is that, you know, we can blame the player, we can blame the kids, we can blame whoever, but it's like one time when when Tony gave that speech about Daddy Ball, and he says about how kids are these days. It's not the kids, it's the people teaching the kids. And all of this, to me, a lot of it is not necessarily the student athlete. And look, some of the student athlete makes their decision. And you know, if you want to leave your teammates behind, that's on you. But somebody's influencing these players to make these decisions. Somebody's coaching them to make these decisions, and they're misguiding them. That's what's aggravating, because the people that are supposed to be guiding them, they're purposely misleading them for selfish reasons, and they're supposed to be the adults in the room, whether it's an agent, whether it's a booster, a coach, or whoever, you know, a coach at another school. I mean, it's gotten to be so out of whack that, we talk about in this particular case, was there a verbal agreement or a written agreement? The fact that we have to have these legalities behind all this because for what? You want to make some extra money? Okay, fine. But the problem with the legalese and all of this is there's so many gray areas and the adults in the room don't want to fix it. That's what bothers me.
They don't want to fix it, Jerry, because they're getting paid.
It's like a hurricane hitting, I don't know, I'll say New Orleans. And it's like if you're at the pumping station, you're going to do what you can to pump the water out from coming in. They're just letting the water and the flood just come on in and doing nothing about it.
But Jerry,
absolutely nothing about it.
The thing is, and we saw it with one of our players, they shop these players without the players even knowing it.
Yeah.
Okay. They're shopping the players without the players knowing it. They get offers. They go to the player's family or even the player and say, hey, I can get you. Look, they're offering $100,000 at school X, but they're offering $250 at school Y. You go in the portal, you transfer to get them, you're going to get this. What they fail to tell them is how much they're getting out of that and how much they promised their mama and their uncle who connected them, how much they're getting. So the kid gets to that school and guess what? They ain't getting half of what they were promised. And by the way, they're riding the bench this season. We got one player that went to Memphis, promised all this stuff, never played one game for them.
And what's even worse, it makes it even sadder about all of this is the fact that, again, the adults in the room are the ones that are standing by and not doing anything about it. Look, you want to talk, okay, to expand on that, look at the NCAA. Look at their response. Nothing we can do about it. You know what that tells me? The NCAA is done. They're done. They are done. And it's self-inflicted. Way back when they were punishing the little schools to benefit the big schools, all they did was feed a monster. Now the big schools, they've set it up to where they monopolize themselves without the official in writing, without the official, in writing grant that they did. But there's nothing they can do to stop it because they allowed it to happen. And this is 20 or 30, 40 years in the making. But now they've created a monster in all of this. And again, you've got the people with their hand out that they don't want to stop it. And so when it comes to the point, like you said, like today what opened my eyes today to all of this is the fact that, like you said, UNLV's, they're 3-0. They've played 3 games. And their star quarterback is already leaving, basically saying, I want to be a free agent because I'm not getting paid. That's what he said. Like, not necessarily word for word, but that's what he implied. I was promised money. I didn't get the money. I'm out. I'm going.
So let's take this a step further. Why do I want to give to NIL? Why do I want to support a school? Why do I want to be a fan if I don't even know if my favorite player, my star player that's giving me a chance to be in the playoff won't even last 3 games in the season?
Won't even stay. Yeah.
Now,
won't even stay.
Power 4 teams don't have to worry about that. You know why? Because they already got people paying under the table. So that's just a quick call to Joe down the street who'll come give him some money under the table in a Porsche and say, be happy. They ain't got those problems there. But at a UNLV, this is highlighting the issue with this whole thing. It's a Wild West, and this is what you get. I just didn't think it would happen this soon. Now, let's take it a step further, Jerry. Now, Reggie Bush is filing a lawsuit against the NCAA saying he was never paid for his name, image, and likeness. And EA Sports made hundreds of millions of dollars with his name, his face, and likeness on the games. But he was prohibited by the NCAA to not get paid for it. So not only did they have to give the Heisman back, now he's saying, well, screw you. I want to get paid for you making all this money off of me.
His face was on the cover of the 06 game, I think. I mean, that was his. Yeah, he was on the cover of it.
Hundreds of millions of dollars made by EA Sports, which in turn got paid to USC. They made some of that money off of licensing. The NCAA made some of that money off of licensing. Reggie Bush didn't get $1. So he's like, well, screw this. And this all happened today. All of this happened today.
And you know what, Nick? I know you and AYS were having a good conversation about this morning on Twitter. AYS Sports brought up a good point about And it's a valid point. He said, look, would you leave? I think what he said, would you leave your job if they promised you money and didn't pay you, you would leave your job. And I read your response, and it was a good conversation. It's a valid conversation. My issue with that question, not to say it was a bad question, but my issue is this is college football, and it's now to the point where the perception of college football is turned into employment.
It is. That's where it's going.
That's
where it's going.
I mean, and look, he I think it was Blake, right, with AOIS, he brought up a good point. It's a good question. It's a good conversation to have with what's going on. But isn't it sad that we've gotten to this point where being a college football player is basically being an employee instead of a student?
Okay, I'll challenge you on that, because you know what? I think for all intents and purposes, they have been employees for years. They have been, but they had the luxury, or the universities had the luxury of not having to pay them, not having to pay for their health care, right? Not having they didn't have to do any of this stuff for them. All they had to do was say, we'll pay your books and tuition and you're good. At the same time, you got kids really putting their bodies on the line to make millions of dollars for universities. I mean, think about it. TSAB down the street would not be nationally recognized had it not been for the success of their football and baseball programs, right? That has happened. The millions and billions of dollars that they have made happened on the backs of 18 to 22-year-olds. So I do think that they should be treated as employees. And I do think that NIL should be a part of that. I just don't think that, I think it should be equitable. I think player A should be getting paid what player B gets paid. And this NIL business, which it was intended to be your name, image, and likeness, is now just, oh, we're going to pay you, and that's it. That's not what NIL was intended for.
It's pay to play. And
in a way, being an employee of the universities absolutely don't want that to happen, because then again, now they're responsible for health care. Now they're responsible for wages. Now the kids are going to get taxed on that. That's a whole thing. But at the same token, we would literally be in a better place had they started treating them as employees years ago than they are now, with this crap that's going on that has no structure to it and no limits. And so you recruit a guy from another team illegally? What are you going to do? Nothing? Prove it.
So let me push back a little bit on that, actually. And it's a good point you bring up, but I'm going to ask this question playing devil's advocate a little bit, because I do understand the academic side of this as well. You've got school officials, whether it's presidents or people in administrative staff on the academic side of these major institutions, a lot of which don't follow sports. They don't go to games. You'd be very surprised at certain schools that have athletic success that don't even know they have a game. It's all about academics, and everything's about academics. It's a college, it's a university, which that's what it's intended for. But at the same time, while they preach about how they don't like athletics because you're coming here to learn, the presidents, you give them the power to vote you into certain conferences. You give them the power to make decisions that affect a TV contract or how much revenue TV revenue brings to your school, which is great for your school because it's a number one marketing tool. But nobody ever really divided, in my opinion, to your point about student athletes. The problem is that you say they should be employees, but at the same time, the messaging of the academic side of these institutions, they say otherwise while doing the opposite. In other words, they're saying, well, we're an institution. We're here for higher learning and they're students. But then right away, they'll sell their school out to go to a certain conference across the country, like these California schools going to the Big Ten or the ACC, and make their student athletes travel on flights for volleyball games in the middle of the week, as if you're going from New York to London, same distance, to make some extra cash from your TV contract. So the problem with I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying about making these student athletes employees or trying to treat them that way. The problem is that the messaging is so foggy and convoluted. There's so much hypocrisy in it, I guess is what I'm getting at. And I don't think it'll ever, I don't know how you fix that at this point. It's such a mess.
Well, this is true because and I don't buy that the presidents don't pay attention to athletics, because they're signing off on a Nick Saban getting paid hundreds of millions of dollars over a 10-year period, right? These coaches are getting paid like Napier to get fired. He should be counting his blessings. He didn't have to deal with the fans that they're paying him to leave, and I'm making $65 million. Thank you very much. So you're paying a coach 5 years, $65 million, but you're telling a player, sorry, we can't pay you minimum wage or whatever. I just think again, I think the schools have been making so much money off of the backs of players, and had there been an opportunity for them to be employees and do the right thing and have healthcare included in that, I think that we would be in a better situation today. Now, that besides the point, because that's not the case. You know what the next step is, Jerry? Collective bargaining. That's coming next.
It's coming.
And
I mean,
players'
that
union.
is almost foretold that that's going to happen. I mean, it has to. In this situation, I don't know if they have a choice.
But my question is, so a lot of these kids are going to make some money in college playing the game, obscene amounts of money, have to go into the real world after that and get a job. Then what? What kind of life experience are you being taught there? Because
Well, I've been saying
you're going to have to work. That money's going to go away. Not only that, the kids who do happen to make the cut and get drafted in the first round, their $1 million contract in the NFL, they're going to scoff at that.
I mean, and the thing is, and one thing I find, and that's where you kind of draw the line on what's what. You go to college. College in general is the last line of education before you go into the real world. That's what college supposed to prepare you for. In this scenario, what's going to happen when you got these players leaving whenever they please because they're not getting paid? When they go into the real world, there's no transfer portal in the working world. You know what the transfer portal is? The unemployment line. That's what it is. So what are you teaching these 18 to 22-year-olds that if you don't like your job, you just get in the unemployment line and go find another job? I mean,
but that's
again,
the world
where do you
we're
draw
in,
the
Jerry.
line?
But that's the world we're in. And that's all. I will say this. This started with Steve Jobs and then happened with social media. We got these things in our hands that we can't. I mean, all of us have this right next to us. We can't let go of it. We're addicted to it. And we're addicted to social media. And we're addicted to texting because it's instant gratification. That dopamine in our brain, when we get an alert, it's going off. You're sitting there, instead of going to sleep, you're on TikTok, scrolling through, laughing at things, sending it to your friends. It's instant gratification. And that is what this generation that is currently in college and future generations, if things don't change, they want instant gratification. And it's the same thing with the UNLV quarterback. He wants that instant gratification. I want to get paid now. Look at where we are. I'm taking you here. Screw, if you don't want me, if you don't want to meet my demands, I'm out. Now that's one side of the story, which I happen to actually believe. I really do think that happened. But regardless, that you saw it, two more guys from there, one guy from USC. Now people are starting to feel a little empowered. So not only do you have guys who want instant gratification before NIL, you want instant gratification, but guess what? You're going to have to sit out a year. You enter the portal, sit out a year, then you get to play. That a lot of guys were like, whoa. I don't want to be playing until I'm 35. I'm going to go ahead and wait it out here. Now we're 3 games into a season as a starting quarterback saying, I don't get my instant gratification. I'm out. That kid could make hundreds of thousands of dollars after the season's over. He don't want to wait. He wants it now. And that, to me, is a state of where we are as a society. We want instant gratification. It's not going to get better. It's going to get worse, bud.
I don't disagree with that. I mean, it's a good point, and you're starting to see a lot of players do that. I always thought, I mean, it was bad enough for players to sit out of bowl games. It was bad enough for them to leave after the first year, but to leave 3 games into the season is ludicrous. I mean, that is very concerning.
And the point that this viewer said about if you enter the transfer portal, you lose a year of eligibility. I don't think they can do that. I think that's all part of these laws that were written around NIL. What I will say is I don't know, but I think what would curtail some of the poaching of players would be if I funded a player as a university for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years at this X amount. If I paid their books, their tuition NIL this at a total of $200,000. If you transfer, that institution you transfer to has to pay me that amount of money because they would have paid that amount of money for you. So now I get it. So now you have something in place in which it's going to take the university that's trying to take the player. Whoa. Let's think about this. Like, do I want to is it worth paying $200,000 for this employee or this player? Plus we're going to have to pay for NIL on top of that. So maybe I think if you want to put something around this that is within the law saying, okay, well, guess what? We paid him $1.4 million as a starting quarterback to go to, and he didn't work out. Now you got to pay me that if he transfers to your institution. There are a lot of schools that'd be like, I'm out. I ain't doing that. You know?
Well, it's almost like a contract buyout is what you're saying. It's that makes sense.
They do it for coaches. Why can't they do it for players? So
I agree.
If the players want to go into collective bargaining, which I think is going to happen, and they want to form a union, I think that the schools need to also set those rules in place to where if you take my quarterback, you're going to pay my cost of attendance and my NIL that I paid him. Because it's not fair that I paid him all this money to play for 2 years and then develop him, and now you're taking him to play at whatever big school. Now, Mr. Big School, you got to pay me so that I can go out and get another guy to replace him. I think that's the only way that we curtail this. Will that happen? I don't know. But in a perfect world, if I'm leading this thing, that is the one way that I can see that you can kind of reel it in a little bit and make people think twice before they go start recruiting players that aren't even in the transfer portal yet.
It's a lot better. It's a lot better precedence than what we have now.
I agree.
Lane.
Anything's better than what we have now, bro.
For sure.
Yep.
Lane, what you got, man?
Today just opened Pandora's box. Like, people entering the transfer portal when it's not even open right now. And just NIL in general is trash the way it's set up because there's no roles enforced.
He took a red shirt. He didn't that's the thing. The portal's not even open. He took a red shirt. So he's going to wait.
And he's getting offers, but he's getting offers right now. And he's not in the portal.
And it's not even legal.
Saying.
That's not even legal.
Everything is being exposed now. It's all exposed. It's all out in the open now. So there's no hiding from it.
Oh, it's true. No, it's a good point, Lane. I mean, I forgot about that. I mean, the portal doesn't open till what, December, January, and we're in September. so they're tampering. Obviously, there's tampering going on, I'm sure, behind the scenes. And the thing is, everybody knows it. That's the thing. They could try to hide it. Oh, nothing's going on. Come on, we're not stupid.
But at this point, nobody's going to enforce it. So they can get away with it and do whatever they want.
Well, What has the enforcement been so far? Yeah. It's been, we'll take away 2 recruiting visits this semester. Like, who cares, dude? We're going to violate that too. And then what will you do? Nothing.
Right. And these big schools can afford that. They don't care. It doesn't bother them. It doesn't affect their equity and these quality of players. But anyway, look, this is only the beginning, guys. It's only going to get worse from here. And hopefully, hopefully we can stop the floodgates. But I don't know. This is a start of something really, really big. Anyway, let's move on to conference realignment. So the Pac-12 officially adds to their other 4 new schools. They've added Utah State, the Aggies out of the Mountain West. There were some talks the other day of adding Tulane, Memphis, South Florida, and UTSA from the American Athletic Conference. And 4 of those schools came out with a joint statement with the AAC, basically stating, look, we're sticking in this together. We're not going anywhere for right now. We want to sit and wait. And of course, just playing Tulane this past weekend and talking and kind of communicating with some of their fans. I know their fans were excited about the Pac-12. Now they're kind of upset. Like, what are we doing? What's going on? Why are we staying here? And so I'm looking at the reaction from a lot of the fans from the 4 schools that decided to stay. And they're just like, are you serious? Like, what's the benefit? Now, from what I understand, when they actually tried to negotiate with the Pac-12, I think most of those schools, or all 4 of those schools from the American Conference, didn't feel it was suitable, whether it was travel expenses or whatnot. And there's still a lot of unknowns as far as the TV contract. What was the opportunity cost to move to the Pac-12 with the TV deal as opposed to staying with the American Conference? And from what I understand, the TV deals weren't that different. They felt that adding those 4 schools out of the Mountain West didn't quite add the value that would be worth taking a risk and going to the Pac-12. What do you guys think about that?
Well, the word on the street is that they were offered, I think, 10 or 12 million to help with their exit fees. That would have been around 25 million. And I think all of them were like, well, screw this. Like, well, I'm not going to pay 12 million to leave a league to go into one that, while the branding might feel a little bit better, it's essentially the AAC, but on the West Coast.
Right.
And we talked about it on Saturday. Yeah, football is great, and that drives the boat. But then again, do you want your volleyball team having to travel across the country to play at Washington State on a Tuesday night,
Right.
and then travel back home to play, and then go back to San Diego State? And where is that really moving the needle with your fans? Like,
Sure.
I guarantee you. I mean, look at Tulane in Louisiana this weekend. We had almost a sellout in our abbreviated version of a stadium, but then you would think if we go play at Tulane, they would have a really good crowd there too, because it means a little something. I don't really see what the benefit was outside of the branding.
Mhm.
And I think this was so poorly negotiated by the Tupac. I'll still call them the Tupac, but the Pac-12, because now they're turning around and suing the Mountain West Conference. Have you heard that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So real quickly, I wanted to point out something. You mentioned they were going to help with 12.5 million?
I think it was
Apparently,
12 million, something around that number. Yeah.
It was 2.5 from what I read. So
2.5 million. You're on mute, by the way.
Yeah, the thing I read was 2.5 million.
Okay, I may have gotten that wrong. 2.5 million for their buyout was like 12 or 15. Maybe I'm getting those numbers wrong. I'm just at the top of my head trying to
that was
understand
as well. They felt like, look, $25 million, you only subtract 2.5. Is it really worth 22.5 million to make a jump, like you said, in a place where we really don't know if it's worth that? You know, the problem is that with the Pac-12 is that, look, they've added the 4 teams, but they're all on the west side of the country. They're all like Fresno State, San Diego State. Who are the other two? Boise State, and then you added Colorado State. Those are still schools pretty far away from, say, South Florida. You know, can you imagine going all the way from flying, like you said, a volleyball game from Tampa to San Diego on a Tuesday? I mean,
and not only that, but Southern schools and the AAC and the Sun Belt take their baseball seriously. Like,
correct.
that is a big sport for us. Now, basketball wise, they're adding Gonzaga. Boise State's been pretty good. I get San Diego State. I get that from a basketball standpoint. That'll be a good league. But what I'm saying is, like, when you're in the deep South, baseball's a big deal to you. I don't even know if they have enough teams to have a baseball conference in Mountain West. Do they? I mean, I know
they all have they all have baseball teams, but they're not. I mean, they're not good. I mean, they're average.
Right, but they're right. So what's again? You look at the big picture. I really thought they were going to make the jump, and I thought it would have been silly to make the jump, because it's like that meme I posted, like of all the G5 conferences and then the Pac-12, and then it's like they're the same picture. Like, find the difference. Right. They're the same picture.
Right.
Just because you change names, I mean, you're the mount. It's like when Conference USA went to AAC. It's the same thing.
It's Conference USA 2.0.
Right. It's Conference USA 2.0. So look, I don't know, man. This is so wild. I mean, this is almost as crazy as NIL. It needs to be regionalized. This is so stupid. And I think you've got schools, fans at this point, that are having buyer's remorse, saying, why do I care that Stanford's playing Syracuse this weekend? Wake Forest is going to play Stanford in a couple weeks. So they got to go to the East Coast, and then Stanford's got to go back and play Wake Forest. Who's getting excited for that game?
Especially as a fan, we love rivalries. You know, when we play Southern Miss next week, or when we play App State, when we play Coastal, even Coastal in baseball, or Southern Miss in baseball, or we play, South Alabama in baseball, or we play JMU in basketball. Like, we get excited about that. If you're a Stanford fan, you're playing schools that you're really never played before. Or if you're Cal, playing in the ACC against, I don't know, like you said, Boston College or Wake Forest. It's like, I'd rather play USC or I mean, UCLA.
I'm not lying, Jerry. I'm not even like, okay, we're playing Wake Forest, but that's not moving the needle for me. If they were a conference mate at Boston College, even Syracuse, God bless them, but like being in a conference with those guys, I don't care. Like that doesn't. I'd rather play a Southern Miss. And look, I said when Georgia Southern and App State came in this conference, I was like, oh, I felt the same way. I'm like, I don't care about these guys. But then you realize regionally, this is like all like the App State Louisiana series has been great. They're right there. It's a great destination. It's fun. You know, Southern Miss has been a blessing because we needed that rival. ULM is right there. We don't call them a rival, but they're an easy win most seasons. So we'll take that.
And they're 3 hours away. You don't have to get on a plane to fly 6 hours.
All right. And they were talking about, you know, Hawaii joining the Pac-12 with the other people. And I'm like, so like, again, a volleyball match from Louisiana to Hawaii. Like,
it's like a 9-hour flight.
That makes no sense.
That's from here. That's like flying from here to Paris, you know,
right? And then turn around, go home, and then have to go to San Diego State 2 weeks later. I mean, and somebody was showing I don't know if it was Stanford or one of the teams that went to one of the conferences and how many miles they're flying in football this year. And it just makes no sense. Like the whole point of conferences was to be a regional agreement between like-minded universities to further themselves educationally and athletically. And now it has become ESPN is the daddy and he makes the moves depending on who he thinks are going to put eyes on the television. That's all it has turned into. And the only losers are us. That's the only losers are the fans.
I mean, this past weekend, I know Cal played Florida State and the memes back and forth were hilarious on social media and stuff. But think about it, dude. You had to fly all the way from Berkeley, which is close to San Francisco, to Tallahassee, Florida, which is like almost a 5-6 hour flight for a conference game. I mean, that and they're doing it. And I think Cal has to play somebody else in the East Coast this week. I mean, that takes a toll on your student athletes.
And rivalries that make sense, like Oklahoma State and Oklahoma, can't happen anymore because now we're in different conferences because we think we're better than the other school just because of pride and ego. Like, it's so ridiculous.
And like you mentioned, the bonus in all of this and where it's really gotten crazy, it's almost like the straw that broke the camel's back. It's gotten so wacky and crazy that they don't even know, these conferences don't even know how to communicate with each other, where literally the Mountain West and the Pac-12 are countersuing one another because of the lack of communication, the lack of a breach of contract or the breach of contract. It
crazy. Which is crazy to me that
we're suing each other.
The Pac-12 is suing the Mountain West. So they had the scheduling agreement between the Pac-12 and the Mountain West saying that, you know, it's kind of like what they wanted to do with the Sun Belt, because they did approach the Sun Belt to have a similar agreement. Thank God we didn't participate in it. But the Pac-12 built into the agreement, the Mountain West Conference said, hey, if you poach any of our teams during these years of the contract, you know, and they set buyouts by the number of teams. So it starts like 12 million, then 15 million, then 20 million, then 25 million, et cetera. And the Pac-12, or the two-pac at the time, agreed to it. They signed on it. They said, yes, we agree to these terms. Now they're suing them, telling them, well, you know, that's not legal. And an attorney on Twitter who's very well known in the NIL space came in and said, well, just because you sign a contract doesn't make it legal. No, but it makes it binding. Like, it's an agreement, my guy. So it depends what judge you get in front of, but it's damning evidence if you said, I agree to this, and then all of a sudden you breach that contract and say, whoa. Now we don't think that's legal. All that is a bunch of attorneys getting paid by the hour, making money, and they're just trying to. That's all it is on both sides of the ball.
But Nick, look at what they sign. You think they sign these, like it's a contract between two conferences with millions upon millions of dollars involved with many universities. What, do you think they were signing it for pretend?
But
is that
again?
I mean,
it's not the point. Anybody can sue anybody for anything, Jerry. I can sue you right now for defamation of character, even though that you did, and that, you know what that's going to cause? It's going to cause you to hire an attorney, and I'm going to have to pay for an attorney.
It's going to cost Jerry and Nick money. Is what it's going to cost.
Regardless if I'm right or not.
Right.
So people are getting paid hundreds, if not thousands of dollars per hour on both sides on this. And they're the ones who are pushing it. So again, it's college football is so broken, man. I just want to see a bunch of kids play football on Saturdays, and now you got to worry about this stuff.
Twilight Zone, man.
Yeah.
This is Twilight Zone. Lane, what's your thoughts, man?
What makes it worse for the Pac-12, Pac-7, whatever they are now, they're not an official conference, so they don't have a spot in the college football playoff currently.
And
So
by the way, go ahead.
in order for them to have a chance, they have to at least find one more team.
So you got to find one more team. Yeah. That goes for the Mountain West too, I believe. Isn't the Mountain West in that position as well?
Well, if UNLV,
unless they leave,
leave,
yeah,
then they're stuck in the same position.
Or, hear me out, Washington State and Oregon State could have joined the freaking Mountain West. And I made that suggestion. Somebody's like, but you don't know what that would have taken and legally what they could have done or what they, bruh.
And this is better.
Can get done. Like,
and this is better. The countersuits. I mean,
this is stupid. This is absolutely stupid.
Geez.
So it's just so funny that just a few, I mean, I'd say days, even hours ago, okay, we were talking about the possibility of teams leaving and the Pac-12 being back and possibly getting raided in the belt and all this stuff moving. And now we're like, this craziness has all happened. It's crazy, man. Yeah, I agree with Zookeeper. I think UNLV has had enough talk about leaving for today. I agree.
True.
And how does that look to the Pac-12? You know, they're in shambles right now. So this is, again, everything is broken and we're suffering for it.
And look, I think we can stop the conference realignment conversation for right now, because come next week, 7 days away, there's going to be 10 times more news about this stuff, because there's going to be more movement. I guarantee you, after we get off tonight, whether it's tomorrow or this weekend, there's going to be more talks, and some school's going to jump off their conference and go somewhere else, or there's going to be some type of surprise for us all. And we'll have more to talk about there, because this is just a revolving.
I'm tired, Jerry. I'm so tired of it.
I know. You and me both, man. You and me both. Anyway, moving on. Before we sign off here, let's talk some Raging Cajun soccer. Louisiana Raging Cajun soccer team currently with a 5-1-5 record, also undefeated at home. Cajuns took care of business the other day. They did draw in their conference opener against Texas State by the score of 1-1 this past Sunday. The Cajuns will be back in action Thursday night or tomorrow night against Appalachian State. Game will be on ESPN Plus, and the kickoff will be at 7:00. It's Greek night. All the Greeks head out there. Louisiana salutes, and it's a blackout game, so be sure to wear your black.
I was getting excited. I thought you were talking about Zeus was sponsoring the game. They'd have a bunch of Greek food out there.
Hey, look, I love me some Zeus, so I would be there for that as well.
The chubby boy getting excited about food.
Anyway, make sure they bring water.
Make sure you bring water. That's right. Bottled water that's cold. On Sunday, the Cajuns will travel up to Monroe to Brown Stadium to take the ULM Warhawks. Game will be on ESPN Plus, and the kickoff will be at 5:00. Good luck to Raging Cajun soccer this weekend. Get some conference wins for us. Moving on to volleyball. Christy Gray and the girls, the volleyball team currently sits with a 4-7 record overall. But the good news is they're on a little win streak. They've won the last 2 games in the Raging Cajun Classic. They defeated Jacksonville State 3-2 at OK Long Gym last Thursday night. And they also defeated Florida A&M 3-2 on Friday night. They will open up conference play back-to-back matches against Texas State. First game will be on Friday at 6:00. Game will be on ESPN Plus, and also they'll have a 1:00 start on Saturday at OK Long. So if you have a chance to go check out these ladies, whether it's tomorrow night for Cajun soccer or Friday and Saturday for volleyball, they always appreciate the support and the atmosphere, both at Home Bank Stadium and OK Long. Pretty electric, guys. Pretty electric. Lots of fun. Lane, I know you've been to a few matches for both, so let's hope that both teams can get a nice start to conference play. Again, before we go, don't forget Raging Cajun football at Wake Forest this weekend. Last game of the non-conference schedule. Kickoff will be at 2:30 Central Standard Time. And you can watch the game on the ACC network, as well as listen in on Hot 107.9, 103.3 The GOAT, as well as 1420 a.m. Jay Walker, Cody Juno, and Dawson Irzolo will be on the air to bring you the action. So actually, before we go, we had a question from Cajun Zookeeper. Is that still going on with Helene? Well, as of right now, to answer your question, most of the storm should be passed by then. From what I'm seeing, the Hurricane Helene's actually moving pretty quickly. It's supposed to make landfall, I think, either late Thursday night, early Friday, and it's supposed to be sitting over. Now, granted, the forecast track can change, but the forecast track I saw before we came on, it's actually the low should be over the Midwest as a depression by Saturday. So I want to say the worst brunt of the storm, or should I say that area in North Carolina that should get the worst of it, which should be Friday, midday Friday, and hopefully pass by Saturday. Doesn't change the fact that we may see some rain on Saturday, but at this rate, it's moving pretty quickly, and we just wish everybody in its path the best of luck, because we've had one too many hurricanes in the last couple of years.
Thanks, Dick Farrow. Appreciate that forecast.
No, I try. But anyway, well, it's true, because I mean, like I said, it can affect our travel. It can affect our game on Saturday. So, thought I'd give people an idea of what's going on with that. Well, guys, any final thoughts before we sign off?
No, I got an appropriate outro song today. So enjoy that with the NIL money discussion. And I told you at the beginning, I'm tired, man. So I'm drained. I'm barely hanging on by a thread. It's a good time to close it out.
All good. Lane, what you got, buddy, before we go?
I'm just hoping the Cajuns can pull off the victory, even though I bet against them. But we'll see how it turns out.
All right. Well, we'll find out on Saturday. Don't forget, guys, if you like what we do, please like, subscribe, comment, show us some love. We're on X, formerly known as Twitter. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram, TikTok, Twitch, all of the social media outlets. You can also listen to our audio stream on Apple iTunes, as well as Spotify. We'll have this episode up as soon as we can. And don't forget, on Saturday after the Cajuns Wake Forest game, we will be on for the post-game show. Please feel free to call in, tune in, and I, along with Nick and Lane, will give our thoughts. And hopefully we won't be too upset, because we'll be celebrating a Cajuns win. That's going to do it for this episode. I'm Jerry, along with Nick and Lane. We are the Rager Review Podcast. In the words of the late, great Big Dave Thibodeau, bye, we out of here. See you on Saturday for more Raging Review. As always, go Cajuns.